Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Well, it's good evening in South Africa. We have a webinar here today from some of the management of West Wits Mining, which is progressing the Witwatersrand Basin Gold Project in South Africa. Chairman Michael Quinert is going to give us an overview of the company, where they're at and where they're going. And we'll also introduce the Chief Operating Officer and Country Manager, Mr. Rudy. And we're looking forward to hearing a bit more about some of these much improved DFS figures. So I'm going to hand it over to Michael.
Thanks, Peter, and really glad to be back to talk to you and all the audience about where we're at. I think we've got some exciting updates to go through today, and also some new people to introduce to you to see who's going to be running this project for you. I think first of all, we've got a fantastic new panoramic photograph there of the site. But I'll let you maybe just introduce Rudy first, because the audience won't have met Rudy before, and I think it's very important that they meet one of the key guys now who's going to implement and execute on this wonderful project.
Yeah, good idea. Well, thanks for joining us today, Rudy, the Chief Operating Officer and Country Manager for the company. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you've been, and what you like about the project here.
Good day, Peter. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. Well, I'm a mining engineer by trade. I've been involved with a few operations and projects in Africa and South Africa itself, working in a few commodities, mostly in gold. Yeah, so that's my background, and I'm extremely excited to be involved with this wonderful project in a very well-known gold fields in South Africa.
Yeah, I've looked at some of the presentations we've done. This is surrounded by some of the biggest gold mines I've ever seen, with historical production of 200 million ounces in the hundreds of millions of ounces. And this project's right smack in the middle of that. Working in this district must be a gold mining operator's dream.
No, absolutely. And especially being able to build a mine from scratch in this well-known area.
And given the area too, Rudy, this picture shows that we're right on the outskirts of the city. Obviously, there is no fly-in, fly-out. It's easy to get people, power, water, trucking and logistics. Must be a bit of a breeze compared to some locations.
Yeah, it's great to be able to actually link straight into the city's power and city power grid, as well as the linkage with the water system. So and people are right around us, so it's extremely nice and well situated.
And given that, what's your comment on staffing there and getting accomplished and experienced people to work in this operation, Rudy?
Look, there's still a lot of gold operations around us and close to us. So this area also have a nice history of people well skilled in the mining industry. So for us, it's a great advantage to be able to tap into those skills.
And that's probably a good segue, Michael, into the recent announcement with the IDC, South African government body, keen to see a project like this get up and running. Would you like to comment on that recent announcement?
Yeah, Peter, that coming with the new release of the updated DFS has been very pleasing for us. We've been working behind the scenes with the IDC for a few months. These things take time, and we're very pleased to say they've issued us with this letter of interest, which we will move through due diligence to a binding proposal. The amount was pleasing. It's at the top end of their range for this type of project. At 300 million rand, or about 16 million US, it provides a big chunk of our debt funding. It's on terms that are indicated to be first tier, really good interest rate, not dilutive type funding. And yeah, we're really pleased to have them. We've also had good feedback in our sort of informal discussions with their staff and that about how excited they are about this project, because it's a long time since a new gold mine started in Johannesburg. So while there's a lot of gold there, a lot of the mines are very old, and they're quite keen to see this project get up. And you can see the proximity there to the housing, that it's going to provide ultimately about 900 or more jobs in the local region for up to 20 years, this mine. So even at this first stage level. So if we unfurl the whole project, it'll even go further than that. So yeah, it's very exciting to have them on board.
And on that subject, one of the questions I had sent through was regarding that facility. Can can you tell us a little about the conditions precedent to the granting of that funding, and then how far will that funding take you?
The main condition precedent, like any of these projects, is due diligence. So the due diligence, it's already been to their technical committee and it's already been to their financial committee. So there's in principle approval for the project, but now it's time to roll up the sleeves and go through the minutiae of the project, including all the details in the DFS. The good news is, though, on that is that the material we provided to the IDC was the old DFS. The new DFS wasn't available. So they've approved in principle the project on the basis of a DFS study that was substantially lower in terms of its financial and value outcomes than the one we've just released. So I think on that basis alone, we have good reason to be confident that this will go through to fruition.
All right, well, let's have a look now at the DFS increase. Michael, there's some pretty good figures there. All-in sustaining costs dropped below, well below $1,000 an ounce now. Payback shortened by almost a full year. And significant increase in the NPV and post and pre-tax. Must be pretty happy with that update. What's the main contributing factor to those improvements?
I'm extremely happy with those results, and so are the board. And I think the man sitting above us on the screen there is one of the main reasons or catalysts for that result. He has been working very hard in the background, and I think one of the main things, which I'll let Rudy explain himself, was that if you look at that decline there that got us access underground early last year, that's taken us down to 100 metres depth and opened up a whole, we actually have the mine on display on the old stopes and where we're going and able to measure and so forth. But Rudy, maybe obviously the change in the gold price and exchange rates helped, but we also had increases in costs. So this new DFS had to also absorb all those increases in costs, didn't it, Rudy? So it's a, I think if you could just talk a bit about why, what the underground measurements and which were the catalyst for this motivation for this new study, why that has improved things so much for us.
Yeah, I think the fact that we were able to access underground with this early works program where we could access to 2-level, we were able to do a few underground surveys and do some reconciliations and actually add some of the resources that we didn't include in the previous program with more confidence, and that actually gave us the opportunity to optimize our production plan. And by small changes, we could actually have a huge increase in our gold production over the life of mine, which were extremely positive. And that's one of the main drivers to this whole lower all-in sustaining cost drive.
Yeah, which at the steady state one I want to highlight is the $871 US an ounce, which must put us in one of the lowest percentile production rates going around. So that's very pleasing. And as I said earlier, which I think has to be repeated, it deserves repeating, is that this model that you're looking at that's been released actually, Rudy, includes higher OPEX and higher CAPEX costs as well. So we're not going back to we're absorbing the new costs and putting that up, but we're still getting a better result.
Yeah.
Plus, by increasing the annual gold production, but also increasing the life of mine another 2 years. So it's a very good result.
Yeah. The other figure, Peter, I just wanted to mention, which I think bears mentioning, is the project now is in Australian dollar terms delivering, I think it's $2.6 billion of revenue, and we've got good costs, so you can see we're going to make money out of that, but. To have a market cap at the moment of Aussie just over 40 million, you can see there's a lot of upside here, I think.
One of the questions I had was about the capital raising. Obviously, after the DFS was announced and the funding facility, the share price has improved quite considerably relatively from where it was, yet the raising at about 1.5 cents. Is there opportunity there for existing shareholders to gain some of that placement facility?
There's a bit of a misconception there. This is a raising that's being done under a placement arrangement with a New York institution, L1 Finance, which we put in place about 18 months ago. So it's a standby type facility where we can place a moderate amount of shares based on market turnover parameters. And it's not being done at 1.5. That's a floor price we've set in terms of how they calculate the placement amount. So There is an announcement, detailed announcement about it last year. It's not a conventional placement where other people can. I've actually had a few people ask me about that today, so it's interesting that. But in terms of placing and capital raising, I prefer this is to really just a modest amount of money to keep the company ticking over. We would like to do any sort of further equity placements if we need, or rights issues or whatever we're going to do to raise money at the appropriate time, preferably when we have the other funding pieces of the puzzle in place, so that we're doing it off the back of a solid understanding of what the money is going to be applied for and the certainty in terms of the project's future. So that's sort of the goal. At the moment, this facility enables us to take a little bit of money, I suppose, on a drip feed, Peter, and I expect this to deliver 2 or 3 months further runway for the company while we're in this sort of pre-financing stage. But I'm not expecting it to take that long to get the financing in place, I should add. I'm just saying we've been prudent and taking a little bit of money when it's available.
Well, that clears up that question that had come through pretty clearly. On the funding, with the IDC component, that must give a bit more confidence to the other funding partners that you've been talking to. I know there were quite a few, and you were going through those over the last few months. What does this now mean in terms of completing the funding package, and what sort of timeframe would you anticipate that to be concluded?
Oh, yeah, well, I'll answer the first part. It's actually increased the interest in the project, as you may sort of expect. That's been pleasing. I think we've had another 3 people come to us looking to get involved and go into the data room since we announced the new, since we announced the IDC deal and the new DFS. So it's actually increased the number of people we're actually dealing with in terms of the potential rest of the funding. So that's encouraging in terms of having a better, more competitive set of people looking to help get involved. So in terms of timing, I think that the IDC due diligence would take 2 to 3 months. That's sort of basically what the timeline should be for these sort of things. We would like to get that done in tandem with, let's say, a second sort of support cornerstone funder for the basic debt position and or streaming type position. I think hopefully we would get debt, and then we would look at whether the rest gets funded by equity and when. I mean, our funding requirements also are spread out. As I keep saying, I've said many times, we're not building a plant, so we don't have a big lump sum CapEx spend on a plant here that has to be spent up front. So we can actually, our peak funding runs over 3-year periods. So all this, the advertised or the projected peak funds requirement of $54 million US under the new DFS is sort of provided sequentially over a 30 to 35 month period. So it's not as simple as, some funders may be happy depending on when it comes as equity or debt or how it comes for us to start without all that funding being in place. So we'll have to look at that as it comes. At the moment, let's put it this way, that the 16 million, which has been put up, indicated by the IDC, is a really healthy start with the best type of money and best type of lender you'd want to see. That's attracted a lot of people who have said, well, if the IDC are interested, we're interested. And we'll keep following those leads through. And I hope in the next period, I'm really loath to put a time frame on it because I want to get the best deal. It's not necessarily going to be the fastest deal that gets the best deal. And, we've got to be judicial here and make sure we could jump at the easiest deal to get, which will probably by definition almost inevitably be one that's more costly for the company. So we need to be careful about how we do this.
And that makes sense, Michael, knowing that you are a significant shareholder yourself. So you're looking after your shares as well as shareholders when you view that type of deal arrangement.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A question for Rudy here. How long after production do you think you can get to steady state once you do commence? And what are your expected startup production costs in the first year?
So look, we will build up to steady state production of 65,000 tons of run of mine. That will give about around 70,000 ounces per annum. So that's the steady state where we will build up. Look, initially we will start up with higher all-in sustaining cost, given with some of the capital that we need to spend, but ultimately that will then drop down as we get to that steady state production. But I still believe even with the startup, we will be in the positive cash flow area very soon with production.
And Rudy, in the current uranium market, Westwits could be viewed as quite an attractive uranium company. What's your view on that part of the deposit, and is it still viable for you in the near term once you're in production?
Well, in the Qala Shallows, we do not target uranium at all, but one of our project pipelines, we do have that in the back pocket. So that's actually quite an upside for us as well, especially if we start looking at the bird reef.
And might sit tight as the uranium picture starts to improve, then that's going to be something there, perhaps to add value down the track.
Absolutely, that can move easily up into our value chain.
I think the beauty, if I can jump in there, Peter, of the uranium is that it's in a separate area back to the west of where we're looking at that photo. Probably, Rudy, I suspect 3 kilometres away. Is that about the...
Yeah, that's correct, Michael.
About 3 kilometres away. So it's in a discrete area. It would have access to its to the resource through a separate shaft, and it can be run as a discrete project. I think one of the other things to remember with the uranium is that it occurs in this reef system, in the bird reef, in conjunction with gold in the adjoining reef. So one of the reef horizons is richer in uranium, one is richer in gold. And while each mining on their own is potentially viable, but obviously, it involves a cost. The costs are largely fixed in terms of accessing it. So if you can mine them both in conjunction, you do end up with quite a potentially attractive project where you can use the gold, if you like, as a negative cost on the uranium mining. And also these uranium resource, where it's not a resource, it's a target, but the Uranium Horizon, Rudy, it sits in close proximity to the surface as well. This is very shallow mining, which you'd probably access through a new decline if you were to do it.
Yeah, well, that's correct.
Yep, Rudy. And Michael, what can we expect now in the next few weeks and months? And Rudy, what sort of activities do you foresee occurring out on site?
Yeah, look, I think the main objection now is to secure funding and to get to that point where we can really mobilize the mining contractor and equipment as quick as possible to the mine and then start building this mine. I think we are in a position where we can really start producing ore from day one, which is incredibly. In the meantime, there's a few infrastructural work that we can do. We are actually now busy with some of the water supply and power supply infrastructure that we are working closely with the developers in the area around us.
And Rudy, in terms of plant and equipment, is it off-the-shelf standard sort of plant and equipment that's easy to access?
Yes, so we already went through a whole process where we almost at the point where we can go into agreement with the OEMs where they can produce immediately. We actually already got some equipment on the floor waiting for this project. So so we are at that point where we really can start from day one.
Yeah, I inspected that facility, Peter, when I was over there a few weeks ago. And Rudy, it's 25 minutes from the hole in the ground there. So it's not like we have a breakdown there far away, and they're manufacturing the equipment on site in South Africa. So that is really pleasing. And this guy's saying to me, when are you starting? I've got the equipment ready. So we really have no concerns about the equipment supply. And also, I think the longer term backup and maintenance of it, given the proximity. I mean, we're not sitting out in the middle of the desert somewhere here. We're sitting within 25 minutes of where our equipment has been made.
And that's one of the questions that have come through, Michael. Given the location, it is ideally located next to infrastructure. It is a very attractive DFS. The metrics are compelling. We've got a number of funding partners that I know you've been engaged with for several months now as you approach the conclusion of that dealing. South Africa does have some issues with it that the market's quite aware of. We know that it is tough at the junior end of the market. Have you had much pushback from your funders or your interested parties about operating in this country or the project itself?
Oh, you get some. There's no doubt. There's a percentage of money people who obviously have a perceived sovereign risk issue with the country. There's a certain amount that don't, and but you do definitely lose a percentage of your prospective targets based on the perceived sovereign risk issues with the country. I'd sort of point out to some of them, and I think some of them that are wavering, we've managed to get them to look at it, you know, and come out with a positive view. Even looking at that photo, you can see, you know, it's a developed area. There's mains power. There's housing developments. There's plenty of staff and employment labour resources available. You know, in many ways, even though it suffers from some external perceptions, I mean, South Africa is in many ways a first world country in terms of its mining industry, its technology, its educational systems, and so forth. And I just want to put up one person here on this slide, if I can, here, in terms of one of our key management. She's, along with me, the board member of the project company, Tazama Sawiza here. I mean, Tazama is our key community and government relations person who has been a wonderful person who smooths the road for us and makes sure everything we're doing is understood properly. And what would you say there, Rudy? She's been fantastic. You do the operational nuts and bolts, but this lady makes it all possible in terms of her relationships and networks.
No, absolutely. She makes it smooth sailing from her side. She's helping quite a lot in terms of that, which makes things much easier.
And that's something always that Hume Scholes, who's up there as well, who's the local director there and on the main board as well, but a very experienced mining executive and lawyer in South Africa, is that in South Africa, you have to pay attention to these things, and you can't set and forget it. You must have an ongoing engagement process. You must involve the community. You must involve the community groups and make sure they understand what you're doing, so disinformation can't infect you know, what sometimes the people who are relying on sort of dubious sources for their information. So that's what we do. We're very proactive, and we've thus far had a fairly good run in terms of our interaction with the communities and the society there as a whole.
Right, Michael, Rudy, thanks for the overview. Thanks for walking us through some of the questions there that have been coming through. I try to cover in general most of the questions that we're getting through on the chat today. If there are any more direct ones, please send them through to peter@nwrcommunications.com.au, and I'll see that they get to the gents on the screen today. Thanks, Rudy. And thanks, Michael.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Peter.
Peter.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks for your attention.
Thanks for
everybody who joined us. Bye-bye.
Great. Bye.